Hello and welcome to Forrester High School Maths Department's National 5 Math Support Materials. My name is Mr. McDonald and I'll be talking you through your subject today. Today your learning intentions are to be able to change the subject of an equation and to be able to manipulate equations to find other variables besides the subject variable. To introduce you to changing the subject, I want to take an example you know and just explain it in terms of changing the subject. So below we've got the equation for finding the volume of a cuboid. V is the subject of this equation because we are trying to find the volume using this equation. And the substantive terms are the terms that you need to know the values of to find the volume. So you need to know the value of length, breadth, and height in this case. What changing the subject does is it jumbles the equation around so that you have a different subject. So if you know the volume, the breadth, and the height, you could rearrange this equation and find what the length is. It's something that you've done before, and it's something that you do almost every time you solve a linear equation, but it's something that is going to look a little bit different today because we're only using variables and numbers. We're not going to get nice whole number answers in the end. In order to be able to change the subject as well, we need to know our inverse operations. That's just a really fancy term for opposite operations. So add is opposite to subtract. If you want to undo an add, you subtract that value from both sides of the equation. If you want to undo a subtract, then you add that value to both sides of the equation. Similarly, multiply is inverse to divide. So if you want to undo a multiply on both sides of the equation, you divide. If you want to undo a divide on both sides of the equation, you multiply. Okay, so let's look at a few examples of this. In each case here, the letter in brackets, B, F, and H, I'm going to make the new subject of the equation. So that means I'm going to change that first equation, A equals B minus C, so that it reads B equals something. All right, and it'll be the same equation, it'll just be rearranged so that B is the subject and A and C are the substantive terms. So how that looks, there's two parts to this process. First thing I need to do is I need to write this equation but the opposite way around so that B is on the left hand side with its other variables that's with it, and A is on the right hand side. Okay, that lets me know that in the end I want to have B equals something as my final answer. In order to get rid or to manipulate the minus C that comes with that B, I need to do the inverse of minus C, which is plus C on both sides. Okay, we know that the opposite of takeaway is plus. So my final answer is going to be B equals, that's what we want. We've got B as the subject because it's all on its own. It is what that equation is now trying to figure out. And on the right hand side, we've got A plus on C. And that is changing the subject. Okay, all it is, it's taking an equation that has one subject, in the first example it's A, and then rearranging it so that it has another subject. In this case, it's B. All right, we're going to do a few more examples of that. So in the second example, we want our equation to start with F equals. We want F to be the subject. So again, I'm going to rearrange this so that F is on the left-hand side. All right, all I'm doing is switching the sides of my equation so that F is on the left-hand side. Then I need to think about what is happening to F so that it's not the subject here. Well, it's being multiplied by E. So again, I need to undo multiply by E, and the way you do that is divide by E on both sides. When I say both sides, I just mean either side of the equal sign so that both sides of the equation remain balanced. And then our final little step here is F is equal to D divided by E. We tend to write it as a fraction because as we progress in algebra, there's less and less use for the division sign. Okay, so F is equal to D over E, which just means D divided by E. One more example. G is equal to 2h minus k. We want to make h the subject, so again, rewriting this equation, everything that is on h's side of the equal sign is going to be written on the left-hand side. and everything that is on G's side of the equals sign, which is just G, is on the right hand side. Okay, so now there's two things acting upon H. H is being multiplied by 2, and H is having K taken away from it. So we have to do 2 steps to rearrange this equation. It's much like your linear equations that you know how to solve. First thing we have to do is add K on both sides. That gives us that 2H is equal to G plus on K. And then the second part of that equation, if I want to get rid of the 2 that is multiplying H to make it H equals, so that H is just the subject on its own, I need to divide by 2. So our final answer here is that H on its own is equal to G plus on K. And because I have to divide the whole of that right-hand side of the equation by 2, I'm just going to do one big fraction with a 2 on the bottom. That saves you doing 2 divide by signs, makes it a lot easier to write out. One thing I was always a little bit unsure about when I did this in high school was, with that last example, do you plus K first, or do you divide by 2 first? Which order do you do things in, and do they actually matter? And actually, yes, order does matter quite a lot in this. And this next slide here teaches you a little bit about order. So normally when we're performing a calculation, we have to follow the order BODMAS. That means you do the brackets first, then any order of operations, then division, multiplication, addition, and then subtraction. Okay, in the case of changing the subject, what we need to do is the reverse of BODMAS. So actually, weirdly enough, we are doing SAMDOB. We are working from subtraction, then addition, then multiplication, then division, then orders, then brackets. Okay, we're reverse BODMAS. Because rearranging these equations, we're trying to reverse a lot of different things happening to our key subject variable. Okay, so I'm going to take a few examples where BODMAS matters here. All right, if I start with what is happening to x in this number machine. All right, if I look at my x here, what is happening to it? Well, the first thing that's happening to it in BODMAS is it's being multiplied by 4. Okay, so we're taking x, whatever number that is, and we're timesing it by 4. Then the next thing that's happened to it is it's having 5 subtracted from it. Okay, and when you do that, you get 4x minus 5. Okay, so to reverse that and to get x as the subject of your equation, what you need to do is you need to reverse that kind of number machine. All right, we're going to do SAMDOB, if you want to call it that. So in this case, I'm going to follow the same steps as the last slide. I'm going to rewrite my equation with my desired subject, my x, on the left-hand side, and whatever else is on the other side of the equation goes on the right-hand side. Okay, so the first thing I need to reverse, if I'm going from 4x minus 5 back to x, is I need to reverse the process of minus 5. And the way you reverse the process of minus 5 is with the inverse of minus 5, which is plus 5. Okay, so I'm going to add 5 onto this side of the equation, and 5 onto the other side of the equal sign as well, to keep that equation balanced. So I'm left with 4x is equal to y plus on 5. And because we don't know the value of y, we can't add 5 onto it, so it just goes on the end without any trouble there. The next thing I need to reverse, if I continue back on my number machine, I need to reverse multiply by 4. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And that will take me back to whatever x is on its own. Okay, so if I divide both sides by 4 here, divide by 4 here, I get a final answer of x is equal to y plus 5, a little bit intricate with the mouse, divided by 4. And there we go, we have our final answer. You know you're at your final answer when you have x equals and then something on the right hand side. As long as x has been moved so that it's on its own and there's nothing acting upon that x, then you have your final answer. It doesn't look pretty, it's always a jumble of algebra, but it is the final answer. Okay, let's look at another one. Okay, so here's another example. We've got x divided by k is equal to p over t. And actually, this is quite a simple one. There's only one thing that's acting upon the x. So we can take out that second circle there. The only thing that's happening to x is it is being divided by k. Right, the p and the t, they're on the other side of the equation. They're not affecting that x at all. It's just the k that is dividing the x, and that's what we have to undo. When that happens, we get x divided by k. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite my equation with x on the left-hand side. Oh, it's already there. I might write it out again just to make sure everything follows on from itself, but you don't have to do that step if you don't want to. P divided by t. Okay, so in order to do a division, or undo a division rather, we need to multiply by k. So I'm going to multiply the left-hand side of my equation by k, but to keep it balanced, obviously multiply the right-hand side of my equation by k as well. So my final answer for this one is x equals, and that's the point when you know you've changed the subject, when x is on its own. Now I'm going to multiply p divided by t by k. We should know that when we're dealing with a fraction, everything on the top of the fraction is a multiplier, and everything on the bottom of the fraction is a divider. So when I'm multiplying p over t by k, all I need to do is put the k onto the multiplier side of that fraction. So I get that x is equal to pk divided by t. Okay, one more in-depth example and then we will finish up here. Here's a big one. So what's happening to this here? Well, there's one thing I need to draw your attention to. If x is on the top of a fraction with something else, that is like it is in brackets. Okay, so the first thing that's happening to this x is it's having 3 added onto it, because that's the brackets of BODMAS. That's the first thing that happens. Then it's going through a division, so it's being divided by m. And finally, it's having 5 subtracted from it. And that gets you your x plus 3. Well, this is going to be difficult to fit in the box. Divided by m, take away 5. Excuse my terrible handwriting. Okay, so for this example, again, I'm going to start with my first part of this. I'm going to rewrite this equation so that the x, the thing that we're trying to change the subject to, is on the left-hand side with all the things that go with it. And the right-hand side becomes y. Okay, so working back on this number machine, instead of minusing 5, the first thing I'm going to do in order to get rid of that 5 is add it on. So add on 5 here, add on 5 here. It gives me our first little manipulation, x plus 3 over m on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side I've got y plus on 5. The next thing I'm going to undo on my number machine is the divide by m. So we're going to multiply by m. Okay, so I'm going to get x plus 3 on this side, and y plus 5 times m. Well, if you're multiplying two different things, two different terms, by one thing, we know that we just put those two things in a bracket, and we have an expansion here. If you wanted to expand out that bracket as well and say ym and 5m, that would be absolutely fine too. Remember that both things on the right hand side get multiplied by m though, just like everything on the left hand side is being multiplied by m, so that divider that divides everything disappears. So to go to our number machine at the top of the page, to undo a plus 3, we just have to subtract 3 from both sides. So our last step here, we're going to take away 3 from this side and take away 3 from this side. We get a final answer of x equals, again, x is on its very own, so that means we've changed the subject of the equation. And we get m bracket y plus 5. How do we take 3 away from that? Well, we don't know any of the values of the letters, so we're just going to take away 3 on the end there. And that's our final solution. X is equal to m bracket y plus 5, close bracket, minus 3. Just remember that when you are changing the subject of an equation, that you first of all figure out what is happening to that variable that you want to make the subject, and then reverse it using SAMDOB, reverse BODMAS, until you get back to that original equation. Just taking you to the start of the video again, if I was looking at volume equals length times breadth times height, and I wanted to find what the breadth was, all I would do, because length is multiplying breadth and height is multiplying breadth, I would say breadth is equal to volume divided by the length and the height multiplied together. Okay, that means they're both dividing, they're both on the divided side of the fraction, and that gives you a variable that you don't normally use this equation to find. Finally, I'd like to say very well done on getting to the end of this video. If you have any questions, don't be shy about asking. I'm happy to help. Remember, you can start late, start over, be unsure, try and fail, and still succeed. Always give it your best and always stay resilient. And remember to upload your work on Teams so I can get you the best feedback that you deserve. Well done for getting through this video. I know this is a difficult topic. This is often one that in the National 5 course report and in higher course reports as well is talked about as being something that is a weakness throughout Scotland and is one of the more difficult topics to grasp. So honestly, I am very, very open to you asking questions, and don't let it get the best of you. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.